The boy's handwriting was careful, each letter pressed deep into the paper. Michael Brennan stood before the community board in Henderson's general store, pinning his list next to notices for lost livestock and church socials. His jaw was set, shoulders squared like a man twice his 10 years. Things we need: 1. New boots for Papa, his have holes too. Books for school, we share 1-3. A mama, please. He stepped back, studied his work, and walked out into the February cold without looking at the faces turning toward the board. Mrs. Henderson paused mid-conversation. The blacksmith's wife covered her mouth. Old Tom Fletcher removed his hat, shook his head slow. Eleanor Davies didn't see the gathering crowd. She'd come to post her sewing notice, mending and alterations. Reasonable rates, and her eyes had landed on the child's list before her fingers could pin anything. She read it once, twice, the third time. Her vision blurred. A mama. Please. The world tilted. The store's warmth became suffocating. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth, crushing the notice she'd written. She turned, pushed through the door, climbed the outside stairs to her room above the store with legs that barely held her. Inside, she bolted the door and sank to the floor. From beneath her narrow bed, she pulled a small wooden box. Her hands shook as she lifted the lid. There, folded in tissue paper gone yellow with age, lay an unfinished baby blanket. Soft yellow flannel edged in white. She'd sewn it 2 years ago. Each stitch a prayer. The baby never used it, never drew breath. Eleanor pressed the blanket to her chest and wept great. Gasping sobs she'd locked away for 24 months. The kind of crying that empties you out and leaves you hollow. A mama. Please. Such a small request. Such an impossible, beautiful, devastating thing to ask. Dear God, she whispered into the fabric. I was supposed to be a mama. The winter light faded from her window. She didn't move. Didn't light the lamp. Just held the blanket and let the grief she'd been outrunning finally catch her. Downstairs. The store closed. Footsteps faded. The town settled into evening silence. Eleanor stayed on the floor. The list's words burned into her mind. The blanket still clutched against her heart. Eleanor baked through the night. Her grandmother's bread recipe, the one that required kneading until your arms ached. Rising twice. Patience she hadn't practiced in years. Her hands worked the dough while her mind worked the question. What are you doing? She didn't have an answer. Only knew she couldn't not do it. By dawn, 2 loaves sat wrapped in clean cloth. Eleanor dressed in her warmest shawl, tucked the bread into her basket, and walked to the edge of town where the Brennan homestead sat against the winter bare hills. She saw the place before she reached it. A small house, wood-sided and honest. The fence leaned hard to the left. Laundry hung frozen on the line's small shirts. Tiny dresses. One man's work shirt with a torn shoulder. Smoke struggled from the chimney like it might give up any moment. A man doing his best. Alone. Eleanor's heart squeezed. She almost turned back. The door opened before she knocked. Jacob Brennan stood tall in the frame, broad-shouldered but worn thin. His eyes were kind, the deep brown kind that held worry and warmth together. Behind him, 2 faces peered around his legs. Ma'am. His voice was careful, uncertain. Eleanor's carefully planned words scattered. She thrust the basket forward. Your son's list. I saw it. Jacob's face went white, then red. Ma'am, I'm so sorry the boy didn't ask permission. I'll speak to him. Don't. The word came out fiercer than she meant. Eleanor softened her voice, but tears were already streaming. Don't apologize, please. She looked past him to the children, the boy Michael watching with fierce hope. The little girl with tangled blonde hair and a dress buttoned wrong. I lost my husband 2 years past, Eleanor said, the words tumbling out, and my baby boy the same night. I thought I was done. That part of me was buried with them. She met Jacob's eyes, saw him trying to understand, trying to be kind while clearly mortified. But your son, she continued, voice breaking. He wrote what I couldn't say. What I didn't know I still needed. She drew a shaking breath. I need them too. Second chances. The little girl broke free from Jacob's hold. She ran to Eleanor and wrapped small arms around her legs, looking up with absolute trust. Will you be our mama? The question hung in the cold air. Jacob stood frozen, hope and terror warring on his face. Eleanor knelt slowly, eye level with the child. She touched the girl's cheek with trembling fingers. She nodded. Sarah, that had to be her name. She'd heard it somewhere, buried her face in Eleanor's shoulder. Michael took a step forward, then another, until he stood close enough to touch. Jacob's voice was rough. Would you stay for coffee? Eleanor looked up at him. At this man she didn't know. At these children who'd claimed her with such simple faith. Yes, she whispered. She stepped across the threshold into warmth that smelled of wood smoke and childhood. The kitchen was cluttered dishes stacked crooked. A sock on the table. Drawings pinned to the wall. Evidence of children raising themselves. Evidence of love doing its best. Jacob's hands shook as he poured coffee into chipped mugs. Sarah climbed into Eleanor's lap like she'd always belonged there, and Michael smiled. I'll be helping at the Brennan place, Eleanor told Mrs. Henderson the next morning. With the children. The storekeeper's eyebrows rose toward her hairline. That's so. It is. Mrs. Henderson's mouth pursed. She was the kind of woman who collected gossip like some collected stamps. Folks'll talk. Let them. Eleanor met her gaze steady. Those children need care. I can give it. She'd lain awake all night, waiting for doubt to creep in. It didn't come. Only certainty terrifying and absolute. Walking to her room. She let herself remember. Thomas, her husband. Crossing the winter-swollen river to save a man trapped on the far side. The current taking him under, her. 7 months with child, screaming his name into the storm. Labor starting that night, alone in their cabin, the midwife arriving too late. The baby a boy, perfect and still wrapped in the yellow blanket she'd sewn. 2 graves dug in frozen ground. She'd survived. Moved to town. Sewed for strangers. Existed. Until yesterday. Until a child's list cracked her open and let light back in. At the Brennan homestead, Jacob had his own reckoning. He waited until the children slept, then pulled Mary's photograph from the mantel. His wife smiled out at him. Forever young. Forever gone. Childbirth had taken her 3 years past, leaving him with a newborn daughter and a son who'd had to grow up overnight. I'll always love you, Jacob whispered to the image. You know that. He traced her face with one finger. But these babies need more than I can give. And Eleanor. His voice caught. She's hurting too. Maybe we can help each other heal. He stood there a long moment, giving Mary the respect of his grief. Then, gently, he placed the photograph in the drawer of the side table. Not hidden, not erased, just making room. He left one photo on the mantel, Mary holding newborn Sarah, smiling. The children should know their mother's face, but beside it, there was space now. Morning came cold and clear. Eleanor arrived with her sewing basket, heart hammering against her ribs. The door flew open before she could knock. Sarah stood there in a nightgown, hair wild, face bright as sunrise. You came back. I came back, Eleanor confirmed. Michael appeared behind his sister, trying to look casual and failing. His grin was crooked, hopeful. Jacob stood in the kitchen doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. Steam rose between them. Thought you might need warming up, he said. Eleanor stepped inside, set down her basket, accepted the cup. Their fingers brushed. Both pulled back quick, but not quick enough to miss the spark. I was thinking, Jacob said carefully. If you're willing, the children could use help with their reading. And Sarah's dresses, they're getting short. I can do that. Eleanor's voice was steady now. I'd like to. Sarah grabbed her hand. Will you braid my hair, Papa tries, but it always falls out. Eleanor looked down at the child, at the tangles and hope, and felt something shift in her chest. Not the sharp pain of loss, something gentler, something growing. I'd be honored. Michael brought her his school book, battered, shared with 2 other families, pages loose. Could you help me with the hard words, everyone? Eleanor promised. Jacob watched from the doorway. His children, already reaching for this woman like flowers toward sun, his own heart. Cautious, but waking up. Outside, the winter held, but inside, something was thawing. The first tentative morning of becoming a family had begun. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that felt like learning to breathe again. Eleanor arrived each morning after Jacob left for the lumber mill. She'd find the breakfast dishes stacked crooked, Sarah still in her nightgown, Michael trying to braid his sister's hair with fierce concentration and no skill. She'd take over gently, comb Sarah's hair in long, patient strokes until the child's shoulders relaxed and her eyes drifted closed. Braid it properly. Tie it with ribbon. Watch Sarah touch it reverently. Amazed at the transformation, Mama used to do it like this, Michael said once. Quiet. Eleanor's hands stilled. Did she hum while she did it? Yeah. Michael's voice went softer. Real quiet. I don't remember the song. Teach me what you remember. We'll figure it out together. They did, humming together while Eleanor worked. Michael's memory pulling up fragments until the melody formed. Sarah clapped, delighted. Small intimacies accumulated like snow. Eleanor mending Jacob's work shirt, finding 3 more that needed patching. Teaching Sarah to thread a needle, praising her crooked stitches. Helping Michael sound out difficult words, watching his confidence grow. She'd have supper ready when Jacob came home, nothing fancy, but warm and waiting. He'd stand in the doorway, sawdust in his hair, looking at the lamplit kitchen like he couldn't quite believe it. You don't have to, he'd say. I know, she'd answer, but she stayed anyway. Through supper, through the children's chatter, through the quiet moments after. When Jacob would walk her partway home and they'd talk about nothing. Important in everything that mattered. The town noticed. Awful fast. Ain't it? Eleanor heard Mrs. Garrett say at the general store. She was examining fabric, pretending not to listen. Those poor babies need stability, Mrs. Henderson replied, voice dripping false concern. Not some woman swooping in playing house. Eleanor's jaw tightened. She paid for her thread, chin high, and walked out without a word. But it stung. Michael felt it too. A boy at school mocked the list. Your pa's so desperate he's got you begging for a ma. Michael's fist connected with the boy's nose before he thought about it. Jacob had to collect him from the schoolhouse. Michael defiant and furious. Knuckles scraped. Don't fight my battles, son. Then fight 'em yourself, Pa. Michael's voice cracked with frustration. They talk about Miss Eleanor like she's doing something wrong. She ain't. She's saving us. Jacob knelt to his son's level, gripped his shoulders. I know, but fighting won't change small minds. Living well will. That night, after the children slept, Sarah had a nightmare. Eleanor heard the cry from the kitchen where she was washing dishes. She moved without thinking. Climbing the stairs, entering the small room Sarah shared with her brother. The child was sobbing, thrashing against blankets. Shh, sweetheart, I'm here. Eleanor gathered her up, sat in the rocking chair, held her close. Sarah clung to her, face buried in Eleanor's shoulder. Mama, she whimpered. Want Mama. Eleanor's heart cracked. I know, baby, I know. She rocked slowly, humming the tune Michael had taught her. Sarah's sobs quieted. Her breathing evened. She grew heavy with sleep but didn't let go. Eleanor looked up and found Jacob in the doorway. His face was unreadable in the shadows, but his eyes held something fierce and tender and terrified all at once. She held his gaze over Sarah's head. Neither spoke. After a long moment, Jacob stepped back, giving them privacy. But Eleanor heard him pause in the hallway, heard the catch in his breath. She held Sarah until she was certain the child was deeply asleep, laid her gently in bed, tucked the quilt close, downstairs. Jacob was still awake, sitting at the table, hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee. "She called you Mama," he said quietly. "I know. Does that—" he struggled for words. "Are you all right with that?" Eleanor sat across from him. The lamp flickered between them. "It breaks my heart," she said honestly, "and heals it at the same time." Jacob nodded slowly. "I know that feeling." They sat in the quiet. Outside, winter wind rattled the windows. "I should go," Eleanor said, not moving. "You should," Jacob agreed, not looking away. Neither of them moved for a long moment. Finally, Eleanor stood. Jacob walked her to the door, helped her with her shawl. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. It's not charity." "Jacob." She met his eyes. "I need this too." His hand caught hers. Brief, warm. "I'm glad," he whispered. Eleanor walked home through the cold, her hands still tingling from his touch, her heart full of something she was almost afraid to name. Hope. The supper invitation stretched longer, Eleanor staying until the children were in bed, until she and Jacob sat across the kitchen table with cooling coffee and conversation that went deeper than weather. "Mary was strong," Jacob said one night, voice distant with memory. "Laughed easy, never complained. Even when things got hard." He looked at Eleanor. "You'd have liked her. Tell me about her," Eleanor said gently. So he did. About Mary's terrible singing and fierce loyalty. How she'd wanted a house full of children. How she'd looked at Sarah for just a moment before the light left her eyes. "I was angry," Jacob admitted. "At God, at myself, at her for leaving. Took me a year to stop being angry and just be sad." Eleanor reached across the table, touched his hand lightly. "Thomas was reckless brave. It got him killed." Her throat tightened. "He saw a man trapped across the river. Didn't hesitate. Just went in. And you were alone. 7 months with child. The labor started that night." She pulled her hand back, wrapped both around her cup. "The baby, my boy, he was perfect. Just didn't want to stay." Jacob's eyes held such compassion it nearly undid her. "2 graves," Eleanor whispered. "Same day. I'm sorry. Me too." They sat with the weight of shared grief. Outside, the last of winter's ice was breaking. Inside, something similar was happening. Eleanor found Jacob's boots by the door a few days later, both worn through at the sole, one splitting at the seam. She picked them up, measured them carefully with her hands, committed the size to memory. That night, in her room above the store, she pulled out scrap leather she'd been saving, drew a pattern, cut carefully, began stitching by lamplight. Each stitch tight and strong. New boots. Good ones. He needed them. The fence repair started by accident. Eleanor arrived to find Jacob hammering posts, trying to straighten the lean before spring mud made it impossible. "Let me help." "Eleanor, this ain't— I've got 2 hands and a stubborn streak." She picked up a post. "Teach me." So he did, showed her how to hold the hammer, where to strike, how to brace the wood. Her hands blistered. She didn't stop. They worked side by side through the afternoon. Sarah brought them water, giggling at their dirt-streaked faces. Michael read aloud from his schoolbook under a tree. Practicing, Jacob taught Eleanor to drive a nail straight. She taught him a sailor's knot her father had shown her for binding rope. They laughed when posts still wobbled, laughed harder when Sarah tried to help and knocked one over. "This is good," Jacob said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It is." Eleanor agreed. They reached for the same nail. Their hands touched. Both froze. Eleanor didn't pull away. Jacob's breath caught. The moment stretched his calloused palm against her smaller hand. The sun warm on their backs. The children's laughter in the background. "Eleanor," Jacob said, voice rough. "I don't want to presume anything. But I need to know." "Then don't presume," she interrupted softly, meeting his eyes. "Ask." He swallowed hard. "Would you, that is? There's a spring social at the church in 2 weeks. Would you come with us? As a..." He faltered. "As a family." Eleanor finished. "Yes." Her hand turned in his, fingers threading together. "Yes. I'll need to finish Sarah's dress first." The claiming in those words hung between them. "I'll need to finish Sarah's dress. Not her dress. Not the girl's dress. Sarah's. Hers to care for." Jacob's grip tightened. "Thank you." "For what?" "For staying. For seeing us. For..." His voice broke. "For being here." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "There's nowhere else I want to be?" That night. Eleanor worked on the boots until her eyes burned. Stitched leather with thread waxed strong. Fashioned them with care and skill and something fiercer. Love. She was stitching love into every seam. And in the Brennan house, Jacob sat at the table after the children slept. He wrote carefully on a piece of paper, then folded it, tucked it in his pocket. A list of his own. Things he wanted to say but didn't have the courage for yet. But soon. Maybe soon. Spring was coming. And with it, the possibility of beginning again. The storm hit 3 days before the social. It came fast, mornings starting clear, then clouds rolling in like a dark tide. By noon, snow fell thick and wind howled against the windows. Jacob kissed the children before leaving for the mill. "Storm's supposed to pass by evening. I'll be home for supper." But evening came and the storm didn't pass. It grew teeth. Eleanor was still there. She'd arrived that morning to help Sarah with her new dress, stayed through lunch, and now stood at the window watching the world turn white. "Miss Eleanor." Michael's voice was small. "Pa's not home yet. The mill's probably keeping the men until it's safe to travel," she said, praying it was true. By nightfall, Jacob still hadn't returned. The wind screamed. The fire was burning through wood faster than Eleanor had expected. "We need to ration," she told Michael quietly, while Sarah played with her doll. "Make it last until morning," Michael nodded, understanding in his eyes. Too much understanding for a 10-year-old. The roof began leaking around midnight. Water dripping steadily onto Sarah's bed. Eleanor moved fast. "Help me, Michael!" Together they dragged the bed across the room. Eleanor stripped the wet blankets, remade it with dry ones. Sarah watched, clutching her doll, trying not to cry. "It's all right, sweetheart." Eleanor's voice was steadier than she felt. "Just a little water. Nothing we can't handle." But her hands shook. Her heart raced. Memories clawed at her. Another storm. 2 years ago. Laboring alone. Her baby silent. The world ending while wind screamed. "Miss Eleanor." Sarah's small hand slipped into hers. "Are we going to be all right?" Eleanor looked down at this child, trusting her completely. Looked at Michael standing straight, trying to be brave. These children are alive. I'm alive. This isn't that night. She knelt, gathered them both close. "We'll be all right. I promise. We'll be all right together." She pulled herself back from the edge, fed the fire carefully, made the wood last, told the children stories to keep their minds off the cold and their father's absence. When they finally slept, Eleanor sat watch, kept the fire alive, prayed harder than she'd prayed in 2 years. Dawn came gray and silent. The storm had passed. Eleanor heard him before she saw him, Jacob shouting their names, boots crunching through snow. The door burst open. He stood there wild-eyed, covered in snow and ice, looking like he'd fought his way through hell itself. "Eleanor! Children!" His voice broke with relief. Sarah and Michael ran to him. He caught them, held them tight, checking for injuries with shaking hands. Over their heads, his eyes found Eleanor's. "You kept them safe." "We kept each other safe," she corrected softly. Jacob stood, still holding the children. Crossed to Eleanor, pulled her into the embrace too, all of them together. Breathing. Alive. "I thought when I couldn't get home, I thought, shh, we're all right. We're all right." The door opened again. Mrs. Callahan bustled in, face pinched with concern and something else. Judgment. "Jacob Brennan, the whole town's been worried sick." Her eyes landed on Eleanor. "And you, unchaperoned here all night. Do you have any idea what people will say?" Eleanor stiffened, began gathering her shawl. "You're right. I should... No." Jacob's voice cut through the room like a blade. Mrs. Callahan's eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me. Eleanor saved my children last night." Jacob's jaw was set, his arm still around Eleanor's shoulders. "She kept the fire going, kept them calm, kept them safe while I was trapped at the mill. She earned her place here. Jacob, think of your reputation." "I'm thinking of my family." He looked at Eleanor. "If she wants to stay, she stays. What people say doesn't matter worth a damn." Mrs. Callahan gasped at the profanity. Eleanor stood very still, barely breathing. Jacob had just claimed her publicly, defended her, chosen her in front of the town's biggest gossip. "Well," Mrs. Callahan huffed, "I never." "Maybe you should," Jacob said quietly. "Miss Davies is the best thing that's happened to this family in 3 years. If you can't see that, that's your failing, not hers." Mrs. Callahan's mouth worked like a fish. Then she turned on her heel and marched out, slamming the door behind her. Silence filled the kitchen. "You didn't have to do that," Eleanor whispered. Jacob turned her to face him, hands gentle on her shoulders. "Yes, I did. Eleanor. Do you..." He swallowed hard. "Do you want this us? The mess and the gossip and the struggle?" Eleanor looked at his face, lined with exhaustion and hope. Looked at Michael and Sarah watching with desperate eyes. She thought of the storm, of choosing to fight her panic, of these children's hands in hers. "More than breathing," she said. Jacob's eyes closed briefly. When they opened, they were bright with unshed tears. "Then stay. Please. Not just for today. Stay." Eleanor took his hand, held it tight. "I'm not going anywhere," she promised. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds. Inside, something settled. Solid. Sure. The town could talk. Let them. This was home. Eleanor sat alone in her room that night, trembling in the aftermath of her choice. "I'm not going anywhere." The words echoed. A vow. A claiming. Terrifying and right. She pulled the wooden box from under her bed, opened it slowly. The unfinished baby blanket lay folded, waiting. Just as she'd left it 2 years ago. "I couldn't finish you," she whispered to the yellow fabric. "Couldn't bear to." Her fingers traced the edge, the stitches she'd sewn while pregnant with hope, the raw edge where she'd stopped, the night everything ended. She picked up her needle, threaded it carefully. "I need to let you go," she told her lost child, tears streaming. "Not forget, never forget, but let you rest." The first stitch was agony. The second, grief. By the 10th, something was shifting. She sewed through the night, completing what she'd started. Each stitch a goodbye and a blessing. Each knot tied a release. "I'll always carry you," she whispered. "But I can love them too. Sarah, Michael, Jacob. I can love them without betraying you." The blanket grew whole under her hands, edges bound, corners neat. A thing finished, complete, ready to be given. "For Sarah," Eleanor said softly, folding the blanket with reverent hands. "I made this for you. Now it's for her." She set it aside and wept deep, wrenching sobs. But underneath the grief was something new, something growing. Permission to live again. At the Brennan house, Jacob sat in the quiet after the children slept. He held Mary's photograph, the one from the drawer. "I'm falling in love with her," he told his dead wife. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe the first time Sarah climbed into her lap. Maybe when she hummed your song. Maybe when she looked at me like I was worth something beyond providing." He traced Mary's smile with his thumb. "I'll teach them about you. They'll know you loved them. Know you wanted more time. But Eleanor," his voice caught, "she's here. And she's hurting too. And maybe we can heal each other." He sat in the darkness a long time, honoring the past, making peace with the future, finally. He placed the photograph back in the drawer, kept the one on the mantel Mary with newborn Sarah. The children deserved to see their mother's face, but his heart had room for both now. Love didn't have to be a betrayal. It could be an expansion. Morning came gentle. Eleanor arrived with the finished blanket wrapped in brown paper. Sarah was eating breakfast when Eleanor handed it to her. "This is for you, sweetheart." Sarah's eyes went wide. She unwrapped it slowly, gasping when she saw the soft yellow fabric. "It's beautiful." "I made it a long time ago," Eleanor said carefully. "For someone I loved very much. But I think it was always meant to be yours." Sarah hugged the blanket to her chest, then hugged Eleanor fiercely. "Thank you, Mama Eleanor." The name landed in the kitchen like a benediction. Michael appeared in the doorway, his old list in hand. The paper was creased, worn from folding and unfolding. "Miss Eleanor," he said formally. "Can we cross off number 3 now?" Eleanor's throat tightened. Jacob stood behind Michael, watching, waiting. "Only if your papa agrees," she said softly. Jacob stepped forward, took off his hat. His hands shook slightly. "Eleanor Davies," he began, voice rough with emotion. "I can't offer you much. This land's hard. Money's tight. And I come with 2 children who'll test your patience daily." He managed a small smile. "But if you'll have us, all 3 of us, I'd be honored to build a life together. To be a family. A real one." Eleanor stood slowly, crossed to him, took his weathered hands in hers. "Jacob Brennan, I come with ghosts and grief and stitches that aren't always straight." Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. "But I'll love these children fierce. And I'll love you true, however long God gives us." Her voice steadied. "Yes. Yes. I'll marry you." Sarah shrieked with pure joy. Michael grinned so wide his face might split. Eleanor laughed through her tears. Jacob pulled her close. Careful. Reverent. Like she might break. "You're sure?" he whispered against her hair. "I've never been more sure of anything." Michael stepped forward with exaggerated ceremony, produced a pencil, drew a careful line through the 3rd item on his list. 3. A mama. Please. There. He announced, "It's official." Jacob and Eleanor broke apart laughing. Sarah danced around the kitchen with her new blanket. Michael tried to look dignified and failed completely. In that moment, In that lamplit kitchen with breakfast cooling on the table and joy filling every corner, they stopped being broken pieces. They became a family. Eleanor looked at Jacob, this good man who'd opened his home and his heart, looked at the children who'd claimed her with such brave trust. "When?" she asked. "Soon." Jacob said, "Soon as you're ready." Eleanor smiled. "I'm ready now." Outside, the last of winter's ice was melting. The first green shoots pushed through the earth. Spring was coming, and with it, every beautiful possibility. The church was full but not crowded. Just the townspeople who'd softened their judgment, who'd watched Eleanor tend the Brennan children and recognized love when they saw it. Eleanor wore a dress she'd sewn herself cream-colored, simple, with delicate stitching at the collar. Her dark hair was pinned up, a few tendrils escaping. She'd never looked more beautiful. Jacob wore his Sunday best, brushed clean, boots shined. The new boots Eleanor had made, fitting perfect, strong enough for years of work ahead. Michael and Sarah stood as witnesses, Michael solemn in his responsibility, Sarah barely containing her excitement. Pastor Williams kept it simple. "Do you, Jacob Brennan, take this woman?" "I do," Jacob said, voice firm. Before the pastor could finish, gentle laughter rippled through the church. "And do you, Eleanor Davies?" "I do," Eleanor said, smiling through happy tears. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Pastor Williams grinned. "Jacob, you may kiss your bride." Jacob cupped Eleanor's face gently, kissed her soft and reverent, a promise sealed. Sarah clapped. Michael whistled. The congregation applauded. They walked out into March sunshine as Mr. and Mrs. Brennan, the children ran ahead, laughing. Jacob held Eleanor's hand tight. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For saying yes. For staying. For saving us." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "You saved me too." Back at the homestead, the kitchen table was laden with gifts. Neighbors had brought quilts, preserves, tools, dried herbs. Even Mrs. Callahan appeared, humbled, carrying a wooden cradle. "In case," she said simply, setting it down. "Every family should have one ready." Eleanor accepted it graciously. No grudges held. "Thank you." The older woman's eyes were damp. "I was wrong. About you. About this." She touched Eleanor's hand briefly. "Be happy, child." The afternoon blurred into evening. Guests departed. Sarah showed everyone her yellow blanket no less than 7 times. Michael read aloud from his new book, A Gift from the Schoolteacher. Finally. It was just the 4 of them. Eleanor made supper simple stew, fresh bread, nothing fancy. But they sat together at the table, Jacob at the head, Eleanor at his right, children between them. Jacob reached for Eleanor's hand, for Michael's. The circle completed. "Let's pray," he said quietly. They bowed their heads. "Lord, we thank you for second chances, for bringing us together, for healing what was broken." Jacob's voice cracked with emotion. "For Eleanor, for these children, for this home, for Mama Eleanor," Sarah added, "for Papa not being alone anymore." Michael said. Eleanor couldn't speak past the lump in her throat, just squeezed Jacob's hand tight. "Amen," Jacob finished. "Amen." They echoed. They ate slowly, savoring. Sarah talked nonstop about the wedding. Michael showed off his new boots, a gift from the mill foreman. Jacob and Eleanor exchanged looks across the table, speaking without words. "We made it. We're here. We're whole." After supper, Eleanor tucked Sarah into bed. The child clutched her yellow blanket, eyes drooping. Mama Eleanor. "Yes, sweetheart. Will you always be here, promise?" Eleanor smoothed the blanket, touched Sarah's cheek. Always. You're mine now, and I'm yours. Nothing will change that. Sarah smiled, satisfied, and let sleep take her. Eleanor found Jacob on the porch, staring at the stars. She slipped under his arm, fitting against his side like she'd always belonged there. Strange day, he murmured. Good strange. The best kind. He kissed the top of her head. I keep thinking I'll wake up and you'll be gone, that this is too good to be real. Eleanor turned to face him, took his face in her hands. I'm real. This is real. And I'm not going anywhere. Jacob Brennan, you're stuck with me. He pulled her close, held her tight. Thank God for that. They stood together under the stars, the night air warming with spring's approach. The fence stood straight. The garden plot waited for planting. The house glowed with lamplight. We made it through winter, Jacob said softly. Eleanor leaned into him, breathing deep. We did. And spring's coming. Inside, Michael appeared in the doorway. Mama Eleanor, Papa, can I show you something? They went inside together. Michael had taken his old list off the wall, smoothed it carefully on the table. One item was crossed out, but at the bottom, in fresh pencil, he'd added, we got everything we need. Eleanor's eyes filled. Jacob's arm tightened around her waist. That we do. Son, Jacob said, voice thick. That we do. The lamp flickered. The fire crackled. Outside. The first crickets of spring began their song. And the Brennan family, complete at last, settled into the first night of the rest of their lives. Together. Home. 6 weeks into spring, the homestead transformed. Eleanor moved her sewing work into the house permanently. Jacob built her a small workroom off the kitchen good light. Shelves for fabric. A sturdy table. She hung her grandmother's scissors on a nail. Placed her button box on the windowsill. Claimed it. Made it hers. Sarah learned to read. Slowly. Haltingly. But with fierce determination. Eleanor sat with her every afternoon, sounding out words, praising every small victory. Michael helped too. Patient as a saint when his sister struggled. The boy had grown 2 inches. Filled out some. Laughed easier. Stopped carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. One afternoon, Eleanor found him reading under the oak tree, completely absorbed. She stood watching, heart full. He looked up, caught her staring. What? He asked, embarrassed. Nothing. Just you look happy. Michael considered this. I am happy. First time in a long time. Eleanor ruffled his hair as she passed. He didn't duck away. The garden became Eleanor's pride. She planted herbs, first rosemary, thyme, sage, then vegetables, beans, squash, tomatoes. Sarah helped, which mostly meant digging holes in random places and making mud pies. Eleanor didn't mind. Let the child play. Let her be young. The flowers came last. Wildflower seeds scattered along the fence line. For beauty, Eleanor told Jacob. Not everything has to be practical. He kissed her temple. No, it doesn't. They worked the land together. Jacob teaching Eleanor to handle the plow. Eleanor teaching him which plants needed shade. Partnership in every small thing. The town accepted them fully now. Mrs. Henderson stopped gossiping, started smiling. Mrs. Callahan brought eggs weekly, stayed for coffee. The other women invited Eleanor to quilting circle. She went, laughed with them, shared recipes, belonged. One May afternoon, Jacob came home early, found Eleanor in the garden with the children, all 3 covered in soil and laughing. He stood at the fence, just watching. His wife kneeling in the dirt, showing Sarah how to transplant seedlings. Michael reading aloud nearby. Voice steady and sure. The afternoon sun golden on all of them. This was what he'd dreamed of in his darkest moments. Family. Joy. Life continuing. Eleanor looked up, saw him watching. Her face lit up that smile she saved just for him. She waved him over. Come see what we planted. He joined them, kissed Eleanor's dirt-smudged cheek, examined Sarah's crooked rows with appropriate seriousness, listened to Michael's book report. Later, after the children were in bed, Eleanor and Jacob sat on the porch. The ritual they'd developed to end each day together, talking soft, watching stars. I never thought I'd have this again. Jacob said quietly, a partner. Someone to share the work and the worry and the joy. Eleanor leaned against him. Neither did I. Thought that part of my life was over. Glad we were both wrong. Me too. A comfortable silence settled. Night sounds surrounded them, crickets. A distant owl. Wind through new leaves. Eleanor, I love you. She turned to look at him, eyes shining in the starlight. I love you too. They'd said it before, but it still felt new, still made her heart race. Jacob pulled her close, kissed her properly. She melted into him, grateful for second chances, for brave children, for lists pinned to community boards, for love that healed instead of hurt. Inside the house, tucked above the mantel, Michael's list remained. One item crossed off. His addition at the bottom, a declaration of contentment.